Hey, Jack's coming to come see me. Hey there, dude. Where are you? Hi. I am having issues trying to get my videos done. What's been going on is my husband has been on vacation for the last week, better than a week, and so all of my work gets put on hold until he goes back to work because he wants my 100% undivided attention, just like kids. Which brings me to another subject. I was going to do a video about kids, disciplining, because there was a question about, how do you go about disciplining kids? And I got to talking to my son Michael about it, and I got to talking to a couple of his friends, and we were laughing at some of the antics kids get up to. Decided we're going to have to do some short skit videos just because it was just that funny. But the biggie for the moment, the biggie is one, be consistent. Two, find out what works for the kid. Sometimes you just have to find interesting ways of getting their attention. I'm recording over here, right? Are you wanting attention? He wants attention. Be patient with your kids. They're going to be in your way. They're going to be wanting your attention on a constant basis. And inevitably, while you're recording, while you're on the phone, while you're trying to get something accomplished, they want your attention. Yeah. In a line of discipline, I had to raise 4 kids. There's nothing, I'll tell you this much right now. Raising a blended family is one of the hardest things to do. It's hard enough just being a mom. Like my sister raised 6 kids, but they're all her kids. Not all of mine were mine. I love all 4 of them, but it was very clear where everybody's standards were. And since I wasn't their mother, they could care less if I live or die. Simple as that. Over time, we've grown to care about each other, but I can't ever say that they really love me as a mom because I know they don't. I love them as my kids. I think they're great kids, but I can't expect to be more than what I'm not to them. It's not a competition of moms or anything like that, One thing that we had to keep on clear is that, this is your dad, this is your mother, these are the additions to the family, and these additions need to mind their own business sometimes. That's all there is to it. Disciplines. My Michael, even as a baby, I remember when he was just old enough to walk and do his thing, he was a tough little dude. Kid you not, he would tell me, "Mom hit me in the chest." I could hit this kid with a full-fledged punch with all my might, and he'd stand there and laugh at me. So spanking him really wasn't going to do any good. But if I told him I wasn't happy with something that he did, it broke his heart. Mommy's not pleased with me. Michael was actually, out of the 4 kids, actually the easiest, and I think that was just because he was my kid. I raised him from birth, and he knew what I expected from him, and he just did it. Very seldom did he ever give me any trouble. I did raise him to have a backbone, state it like it is, and there were times he stood up to me and I couldn't argue the point because he was right. I had made some mistakes and he pointed them out, and it's like, my bad. So, as a parent, I think it's a good idea to admit, my bad. I need to fix that. Um, One point I think you need to keep in mind is when you want to discipline the kids, are you willing to discipline yourself? Can't expect the kids to do something you're not willing to do yourself. That's one big thing. Um, with the other kids, we had to get more creative. Adam, when he started, trying to think, I think he was 15 or 16 years old when he started being part of the in our family situation. Um, it's one of those, for the first year or so when my husband and I were, you know, getting to know each other. We weren't married yet. Getting to know each other, and so his kids would come to visit on weekends and stuff like that. And can't remember if it was Adam's 15th or 16th birthday, but I remember it was on his birthday when we were told the kids are now in our care, and this is before we were married. And I was like, okay, so we had to scramble to get things together. Um, Being as a teenager, he had you couldn't spank him. That doesn't do any good. You couldn't ground him. He could care less. Um, he could be pretty stubborn. Kids are kids. They're going to be stubborn. Teenagers are going to be stubborn. The one thing that worked with him, which I thought was funny, is he had this thing about his hair. It had to be absolutely perfect all the time. So when he got disagreeable with me, I knew if I messed up his hair, I just like that with his hair, it would make him crazy. So in order to not get his hair messed up, he would do as he's told. The other thing he would do, the other thing was chores, like doing the dishes and stuff like that. He didn't like to do those. So I said, okay, you can get out of it. All you have to do is have someone else do them for you, but you have to pay them to do it. So Adam would have to pay one of his siblings $5 to do the dishes for him, and he had to make sure they were done right, because if he wasn't, he was the one who was going to get in trouble. Not, if he had Michael do the dishes, Michael wasn't going to get in trouble because it was Adam's responsibility. So he had to make sure Michael got the job done. So that's one thing. Number two kid, Jared. I remember he liked. He couldn't make up his mind. Like you had a bunch of choices in front of you, and each kid was allowed one choice. Each kid would pick one, except for Jared. He wanted everything. That was a challenge. What was another thing he did? We had a logbook. Because of the legalities and touchy issues of what was going on with the parents, accusations and whatnot, um, it was decided that there was going to be a log written every time the kids came to visit. We would write down everything that happened and document it, and before the kids would go back, they had to look it over, agree that it told the truth. They had to tell the truth, and then they would sign it, saying that, it has the truth in it. Well, Jared's our lovely child that supposedly had ADHD. Come to find out it was something else, but he had trouble trying to control stuff. He just had trouble controlling himself in certain areas. It's like bursting out in anger and stuff like that. And one day he got a hold of that logbook. We were just sitting around bored, and he got a hold of that logbook and he was reading it, and he was noticing how often he was being punished and why. And he goes, "Is this real? Am I really this complicated person?" And I says, "Well, what's the rule?" I says, "Does it, is your signature on there?" And he says, "Yeah." And I says, "What's the rule on the signature? You have to make sure it tells the truth before you put your name onto it." And he goes, "Well, yeah. So I guess it's telling the truth now, isn't it?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah." So it kind of made him realize that he didn't like that, that he was that kind of person. But I also, I think it was Adam who said, "I don't like you writing stuff like that about me." And I says, "Well, there's a way not to have that bad stuff written about you in the book." And he says, "How's that? What do I got to do? I says, "Don't do bad things. You do good things. I'll be more than happy to write something good about you." And he's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So he had Dad take him to buy some ice cream for the family, and he made sure that I wrote it in the book that he bought ice cream for the family. So it was fun. Some other things with Jared. Recording. I used to have a job as a secret shopper, and I had this miniature recording. I had miniature tapes and stuff like that on it, and I would always carry it with me when I went to go do my secret shopping, and then when I got home, I would, type everything up. Well, Jared, whenever he would act up, I would turn on the tape recorder, later on play it back for him. He didn't like what he heard, so after that, I just pull out the recording device and usually shut him up. Stuff like that. As long as you had evidence, for him it's more like you had to have evidence that he was misbehaving before he would straighten up, type of thing. Sometimes kids need that. Ashley, biggest problem is getting that girl to clean her room, and I've evidently failed because I heard that she still doesn't keep her room clean. That was the biggest thing with her, but she I can't think of much in the line of punishment for her. She didn't really give me a lot of trouble, but I do remember I tried spankings. We tried. Oh yeah, spankings. We had a rule in the house, since everybody, and this is my husband, this is me, this is the kids, with the exception of, well, Michael started getting abused by the other kids, and by my husband, and so that I had to kind of protect him. But everybody in the house, in short, came from a background of abuse. And so we had to figure out how to take care of the discipline without it being abusive. I am not against spankings. I think when a kid needs a spanking, you just give it to them and be done with it, But we had to be careful on that with our kids because of issues, And don't get me wrong, it wasn't their mother that was abusing them, it was someone else. Their mother had passed away. But one of the rules that we had when it came to spankings, and yes, we had been guilty of using a belt when we had to, was that the only reason why we had different levels, it's like, okay, for this offense, this is what the punishment would be. For this offense, this is what your punishment will be, and so on. And of course, each kid, we had to try something different that made things work better. Well, in the line of spankings, the rule was if you did something that you could go to jail for, you got spanked. And the first offense, you got 1 swat. Second offense, you got 2 swats. Third offense, you got 3 swats, and so forth. We had on the most part, I think Ashley was the only one who was stubborn enough who just didn't get it when it came to those things. So stealing and we had stealing, we had forgery, we had all kinds of stuff. And at one point we had 16 offenses. And we didn't dare use the belt. We were like beyond furious. It's like, I can't believe we're having this problem. We eventually got past it, and she did eventually learn not to do those things, but oh, she was our biggest challenge on that aspect. Um, Michael, I think he got the belt once for stealing, and I am not beyond calling the police on the kids. We had 2 kids that I called the police on because I was beside myself. I don't know what it's going to take to get you to understand this is not how you behave. This is illegal. You can go to jail for it. It's not acceptable, and I will not have it in my house. That's just all there is to it. And I wasn't given any choice but to call the police and find out what I should do. And when I called on the first one, the police officer on the phone says, hand the phone over, so I did. And the next thing you know, I'm looking at tears, and the phone was handed back to me, and I was told if I was given any more trouble to give them a call, and they'll come over and take care of it. The other one was so many offenses. It was me. I had to make it, we're talking about like a 10-year-old child that was doing these things. I found out what the sentence would be for such a charge. And I says, you would be a teenager by the time you finally got out for each offense on what you're doing. So we can't be doing this, And when the kids started realizing I will call the cops on them, that usually ended things right there. I'm trying to think of what else. In the end, they all turned out okay kids. Adam is all grown up. He's got 4 kids. Married. Married. As far as I know, they're happily married. They seem, he's pretty strict on his kids, I can tell you that much. Jared has an interesting lifestyle. Can't say it's my choice, but everybody has their own choices. Ashley is hardworking as far as what I've been told. She works hard and goes to school and all that, or not go to school. She goes to work. She's trying to get into, believe it or not, she's trying to get into a field of being a police officer, and so she's trying to get into that. And Michael just left, is out of the Marines now, and he's going to college, and he's got friends over and trying to make a life for himself. And he is pretty I think it's funny when he's over here with all his friends and his big party. It's not that big a deal. It's not a big major thing. So, but I really think that the kids turned out okay. I think the biggest thing is communication. Beating them up really doesn't solve a problem. When we came across that one situation, I'm sitting there going, 16 offenses? What do we do? You don't beat them up. You try to find what works for them. You find out what they don't like. Sometimes they don't even realize they're misbehaving the way they are, and we had to resort to recording situations. We even had a recording device on the phone, so we knew when calls were coming and going in the house, and we could hear what was being said. If people are really upset about, your kids' privacy, I got news for you. You're a parent. It's your job to get into their business, okay? You let kids get away with that's my privacy. Nuh-uh. You will find out quickly, like I did. Your kids have double lives, sometimes more than that. They have lives outside what they show you, and you don't want that. Okay? You want it up front. You want to know what's going on in their lives. It's your job to get into their business. Because if you don't, they're going to get into trouble. That's all there is to it. And it kind of freaked them out because once they turned 18, I didn't get into their business. And they're like, you mean I can go do this? And I'm like, yeah, I don't have a problem. As a matter of fact, they were, well, I'm going to take off and go do such and such. I said, have a nice time, and what's the curfew? And I says, well, the house door is going to be locked at 10 o'clock. Whether or not you're in it is your choice. If you're not in it, you're camping out there because I'm not opening the door. So they learned that, granted I may not put a curfew on them, but they still need to be somewhere, and if they're not going to be staying the night at home, they need to let us know where they're at. So, and that's just a common courtesy type of thing. So, I think that's the hardest part is once they turn 18 to just let them have their own life. Even though Michael, he's in his 20s, when he first came back from the Marines, he had quite an adjustment time period, and now it's like, at first he didn't want to tell me where he was going or what he was doing because it's none of my business, And I says it's not a case of my business. It's just a case of I need to know because we're going to go do such and such, and if you're going to go do that, it's going to cause a problem here. And he's like, oh, and then he went and adopted a dog, and he doesn't like the dog to be alone very long. So it's like, okay, well, we need to communicate that we're going to be gone from this time to this time, and you're going to be gone from this time to this time, so we need to find out what our time schedule is for the dog, that kind of thing. But, yeah, like I said, just the biggest part is communication. If you just talk to the kid, let them know what's right and wrong, that kind of thing. And set an example. Don't sit there and puff on a cigarette and tell them how they can't smoke. Don't sit there and drink alcohol in front of them and tell them they can't have a beer. It's contradictive. If you're going to be doing stuff that you don't want them to be doing, don't do it in front of them. You don't want them cussing, don't be cussing in front of them. You don't want them throwing a fit, don't throw a fit in front of them. Type of things like that. You should let them know. There have been times where I've pitched a fit. I got kids they got pretty ugly with me. They were just vicious at me. And I threw a fit. It's like, I'm done. I'm not dealing with you if you're going to act like that and treat me like that. And I had to put down the law on their father as well. And had to let everybody know what my limits are. And that was one of my biggest pleas. I says, please, whatever you do, do not push me beyond my limits. Everybody has a limit. Don't push me beyond mine because it won't be good. So, know what your limits are, know what their limits are, that kind of thing. But, yeah, we had a lot of interesting ways of discipline that I think I might have to do some videos to show you because it was just kind of on the weird side. So, that's my story. Now, I hope it helps. Bye.